Yeah, I think bringing up Travis Green is super interesting and important. I think that hire was perhaps lost in all of the craziness of July 1st and, the chicken trade and all of the Allmark trade and all of that stuff that went down. But I mean, we said it before the off season that, the Sens coaching hire would probably be the most significant move that they made, and they made it pretty early in selecting Travis Green. I think Nathan and I in particular were kind of down on the appointment when it first came out. I think Ian, friend of the show at The Athletic, did a really interesting piece that sort of changed some people's minds by digging into the records at Vancouver and explaining, what his positive impacts were, and sort of demonstrating that some of the more negative impacts were perhaps not necessarily on him as a coach. However, I do still think it is a little disappointing that we got the coach with basically the worst record of the guys that were available. But I think that, with the talent that the Sens do have, and there is talent on the team, even if we know it's not quite deep enough to be a contender right now, but I think that he could do an interesting job. And I think that the bar is pretty low. DJ Smith was not a very effective NHL coach. We know that Corpusalo was a almost historically bad NHL goalie. And I think the only way we can go is up, but that of course begs the question, how far up can we go? And to flip it back to you, Alex, are the Sens a playoff team this year in your estimation, or do you think that that road is still a little bit longer?
If Travis Green can do what he did in Vancouver and get his team to hot starts, then this team can make the playoffs because they've always been so woeful to start the year. But in all honesty, I think they're in that Detroit, Washington, Buffalo range from last year in terms of that team that can easily be, you know, 5 points out of a playoff spot or 5 points in like a wild card spot. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the place that they stand. At the same time, you guys know it's like who are you taking out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Islanders are that good. I think Washington could be way better, but they've also brought in a bunch of new players. Carolina, I think will be take. I don't think they're a playoff team next year. So there's a couple teams, but if you look at Boston, Tampa Bay, obviously Florida, Toronto, I don't know if they're that much worse. So it's who do you take out? But if they get good goaltending, Stützle goes back to that 90, 100-point guy. Kachuk is a 35 goal scorer. Sanderson maybe takes another step. I think this team's going to be pretty good. It's just how good. And um, I just, it's clear that they're not like, could they take a Vancouver step like the Canucks did last year? Maybe not to that extent, but I could see them taking a big jump. I could also see them basically being the 22-23 Senators and missing the playoffs by 5-10 points. So if I had to guess, if I'm putting my rational hat on, I'm gonna say they probably missed the playoffs by maybe 3-4 points, but I don't think they're that far. Like they don't need a lot to go well for them to make the playoffs. As you said, if Corpusalo was even okay last year, this team might have been in that wild card spot or in that wild card race, but they didn't get goaltending. And you have Allmark, and I don't expect them to be that bad because honestly, he was really good in Buffalo, and those teams sucked. So
Yeah.
back in the day, so I feel pretty optimistic that this team will be in the playoff hunt. But if they miss the playoffs, watch out. I think anything will be on the table.
Yeah.
I think Brady Tkachuk, maybe not Tim Stützle or Jake Sanderson, but like even Tkachuk, like Shabbat, all these guys who have been wasting away, missing the playoffs for years, they're going to be in their prime. And what do you want to do? And I don't begrudge a player for, but I think that's maybe, a year from now question rather than now. But you make the playoffs, all is well. And you're moving forward and finally bringing some playoff hockey to the CTC, which is much needed.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Kachuk's entering his sixth year in the NHL. He's been in the NHL a lot longer than I think people realize. But sadly, he has yet to make the playoffs, and I hope that we never have to hear the Brady Kachuk trade rumor stuff in a legitimate manner. I know there was
Yes.
off-season shenanigans this year, but
Oh,
like in a legitimate manner, I hope we don't have, Friedman and whoever else spreading rumors of like, yeah, Ottawa's open to talks about I don't even want to say his name because that's just cursed. But yeah, so I hope that day doesn't come. But I think, you mentioned goaltending being a big point here. I think also the health of guys like Josh Norris are going to be top of mind for the Sens. And how does he look? Do they put him on the wing? Do they keep him at center? What happens there? And can he stay healthy? Because when healthy, I think Ottawa's top nine looks quite good. You'll lose maybe 1, 2 guys. I think all of a sudden you're looking pretty rough. So for me, that's going to be a big question mark that I think with Chikrin, I know no longer on the team, but the biggest question mark for him was, can he play 82 games? And he actually managed to do that. So hopefully
not very well, but yeah, he did play 82 games.
he did manage to at least hit 82 games played. Yeah. Whether he was actually showing up to all 82 is questionable. But yeah. So all that to say, I think health is going to be a factor, and I think Bennett was being a little too courteous about me being not disappointed with the Travis Green hiring. I think mostly I when we recorded that episode, I was trying to find all the copium I could. But yeah, it was disappointing at the time, but it grows on you and you can't change what decisions are made. And I think they need a guy who's kind of, I don't want to say, it doesn't even have to be younger, but he's like young, so he can kind of connect with the whole newer age player mantra that gets thrown around, but he's also a hard ass. And it says something when a guy like David Perron, who's been in the NHL for quite some time, is excited to get to work under a coach who is a notorious hard ass in training camps and has some pretty grueling stuff going there. So I think that does say something, and hopefully that actually translates to a good October, November, December, because that seems to be just a cursed trio of months for the Sens.
What I would say just on the Travis Green thing, and I'm not saying media know everything, but I will say, talking to like colleagues in Vancouver, like they had nothing but praise for him. Like they thought the world of Travis Green, and they thought he got hard done by because of ownership, because of Jim Benning, who was elite at signing bad contracts, but it's just he really got hard done by. And the one season that he actually had like a close to playoff caliber squad, they made the second round of the playoffs. It was the bubble. I'm not saying, oh my God, we're not the Leafs, and we're not going to say that's like winning the Stanley Cup, making it to the second round. But I just, overall, I think he, from what I've heard, is a really capable coach. And the way he talked about his team at that presser, like I was really impressed, not just because he said glowing things, but he was you could tell he was concise. He's a good communicator, but he's a hard ass. And I think that's what today's NHL players want, is they want to know where they stand. They want to be they want to be pushed, right? You talk about Shabbat and Kachuk, like at their year-end season-ending availabilities, they talked about accountability. Like that would have never been the case in under the DJ Smith era, right? Because there was always an excuse. And I think now, bringing in from the remnants of the Jacques Martin, who I think did a lot of good work as best as he could to kind of unravel the bad mojo that the team had under DJ Smith. And now I think they have a coach that it makes a lot of sense why they hired him. And I don't really, outside of Craig Berube, I don't really know what coach people would have loved. Like maybe, I don't know. I really don't know what coach this fan base would have liked outside of Berube. He went to the Leafs, which obviously stings a little bit, but at the same time, the Leafs aren't winning a cup anytime soon, so we're okay. So that's kind of just, I wanted to just add that on Travis Green.
And after all of the press he's done, I have to say, like he left a good impression on a lot of fans. You're absolutely right. I mean, we were on this podcast, I think we were kind of hoping for like Claude Julien, like somebody around there who had a little more pedigree. But at the same time, Travis Green has made a playoff and DJ Smith has not. So that's already a higher bar. Watching a TSN short today, Marty Biron essentially broke down the numbers and said, if we got if we shaved off and what got league average goaltending, we go from a minus 24 goals against, a goals differential, to a plus 14, which is essentially putting us directly into a playoff spot. That's how catastrophically bad our goaltending was. And you now added one of the best goalies in the league to your core, while also minusing one of the worst goalies in the league. So it's a beautiful.
Put some respect on Korpisalo's name. He was definitely the worst goalie in the league.
Hey, whoa.
Hey, Arvid Soderblom would like a word.
Yeah.
But
I think Korpisalo did more like he did more damage per game DPG. It's the new stat.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. Yeah, and I think it may not be all doom and gloom for Sens fans, especially when you kind of when you set it out as such. You mentioned the Nick Jensen trade wasn't the greatest, but I think it still solves a need and fills a hole better than Chychrun did, in my opinion. So I think it's been a good off season so far, and like it's good that we can all kind of come together and be like, hey, the Sens, it wasn't too hot of a summer, but it was warm. It was good. We're happy.
Sometimes like when you look at Pierre Dorian and like he went for DeBrincat and Chychrun, all those guys, like, big names, but did it make sense for the team? And I think what Staios did was he added players that make much more sense for the team.
Yeah.
Right? Nick Jensen better than Jacob Chychrun? No. Is he probably better for this team in many ways? You could argue, yes.
Yeah.
Right? Is David Perron a good player for this team? Probably. Allmark, is he a better goalie than Korpisalo? Almost certainly, right? So even Amadio as well, like a versatile two-way player that this team doesn't have. They had a lot of flight risks in their own end. And I think they're kind of I think this team looks way more like a playoff team than in past years, right? And so I think Staios deserves a lot of credit. At the same time, there's a lot to be undone. And at the same time, when you look at this team last year, like who played well? Right? Almost everyone played underwhelmingly or to kind of where you expect them. Like no one exceeded expectations except I guess Matthew Joseph for 50 games, right? Like
maybe Sanderson.
Sanderson. I would say maybe Tkachuk nearly hitting 40, but even he sometimes scored in bunches and then went cold. So I don't know.
But it's a fair point. I mean, hardly anyone covered themselves in glory last year.
And it was a bit of a year with hell with the Pinto, with the Dorian. Like there was a lot of mess.
Going to Sweden, we all knew it was going to go badly.
Well, just wait for the World Junior trip.
Lovely.
It's not going to look good. The Sens.
That's true.
But
that'll be some road trip.
I think it's a 9-game road trip. It's something crazy.
They're gone for almost a month, like almost a calendar month, which is nuts.
Road Warriors.
Gary Bettman loves the Ottawa Senators.
Let it never not be said that he loves this team.
I will say that apparently Ottawa has the third least amount of travel in the league this season. So
it must be because of that road trip. Like they probably looked at that and was like, okay, maybe we should give them a little pass here. Like
they do LA all at once. They do New York all at once. They're just gonna be in the same place. Florida at the same time. Yeah.
Just get it all done with.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have any more hockey related questions, but if not, I was gonna try and end on a fun one as we like to do here with our guests.
Go for it.
I was gonna ask you, who is, I'll say, your favorite player that you have interviewed and why?
This is the Senators related. Favorite player to interview.
I know you're excited to interview Allmark, but I want to know who your favorite players that you've already talked
probably
to.
My 3 favorite from last year was Batherson, Pinto, and Kelly. I really like JBD too. JBD was great. I love JBD. Oh man, I will say Pinto's always funny. Like he's always has a smile on his face. He doesn't take himself too seriously. I swear he says for the boys like at like once every minute. He's at that clip, Ferda per 1 minute. So I'd say probably Shane Pinto. I really like Shane Pinto. He was great. I like Sanderson, but he was probably my favorite. But I will say just like getting to know Batherson and his family was really, really cool. And interviewing his sister and like meeting his parents. That was probably like the most like, oh, I feel kind of like in this business a little bit and getting to develop relationships. So that's probably the coolest one. But yeah, definitely probably the most nerve-wracking I had was like saying hi to Tim Stutzla, just being a fan at one point and saying hi to him. And he was very gracious, and I asked him about Leon Draisaitl or something. I think I talked to him when they made the Four Nations or whatever. It's like, oh, would you love to play with Leon? He's like, yeah, that'd be cool, but obviously not going to be the case until maybe 2026, I guess. Yeah. But probably Shane Pinto is just for like the vibes. And not that Batherson isn't funny, but he always tells me about how he's hanging out with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby. So that's I think, yeah, so that those are kind of cool that he's like, yeah, Sid and Nate and all that. So they're very close. So those are maybe my top two.
Did you
In
ask?
fairness, if I also hung out with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby, I would also probably not shut up about it. So I can respect that from Drake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, does their primary training consist of filming Tim Hortons ads, or like what do they do in the off season?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Drake's the photographer. That's his side gig. No,
Marshawn's the boom guy.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no,
and they have to constantly tell him not to lick the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I do know they golf a lot together. That's the one thing. They're big golfers. They train all the time together. So if you see Batherson with some, extra skills and extra dangles or a better shot, you can thank Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Is there anything that you're writing that you want to plug, or maybe anything coming up on your podcast that you want to mention before you go?
Yeah, I have some stuff in the ether. I can't really share it right now, but I'd say yeah, I have some stuff coming up. So stay tuned. My podcast is gonna try to get it rolling like next week. Maybe have some Sens content. We'll see. But nothing in particular, but I appreciate the plug and love the show. Thanks so much. Have me on whenever, and hopefully, in a couple months from now, we'll talk about the Senators in a playoff spot just for this show and for Sens fans everywhere that have been just they deserve it. But I keep thinking to myself, the Sens have more playoff series wins since 2017 than the Leafs. So just hang your head on that. So that's what we need to live by. But thanks so much for having me on, guys, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was a long time coming. So maybe we'll talk to you again when training camp opens up and we have some more stuff to talk about.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Take care.